Hello friends, the topic of today's lecture is bone and bone disease, which we popularly know as osteopetrosis. Osteopetrosis is a rare bone dysplasia that was first described by Albert Schonberg in 1904, and according to other scholars, it was given the name of osteopetrosis only later in 1926. The dysplasia is characterized by failure of osteoclasts to resorb bone. So that is the basic pathology of patients with osteopetrosis, that is the failure of osteoclasts to resorb bone. Calcified chondroid and primitive bone persists and lead to osteosclerosis and increased brittleness of the bone, because the bone which is initially formed is always a woven bone, which in normal individuals is broken down by the osteoclasts so that it is relayed along the better structures to form a mature bone. Unfortunately, in these patients, the osteoclasts fail to resorb bone, and hence the woven bone persists into the adulthood. Coming to the types of osteopetrosis, there are several different forms, out of which the most important and the most obvious form of osteopetrosis is malignant osteopetrosis. It has an incidence of 1 in 300,000 births. It has an autosomal recessive type of inheritance. The clinical manifestations of the disease appear either at birth or in early infancy. There is obliteration of the marrow cavity by the bony overgrowth, and this results in an inability of the bone marrow to participate in hematopoiesis. So apart from the bony problem, these patients also have hematopoietic problems because there is no space within the bony marrow to produce the hematopoietic stem cells. Hence, pancytopenia develops, and the presenting symptoms are often such that they present with abnormal bleeding, easy bruising, progressive anemia, and a failure to gain weight and a failure to thrive. Hepatosplenomegaly occurs in these patients because there are extra medullary sources of blood formation in these patients. Coming to the findings in the skull, these patients have a delayed dentition. They have often multiple caries in their tooth. The bony overgrowth of the cranial foramina causes the cranial nerve to be compressed within the bones of the skull, which can lead to blindness and deafness, because the optic nerve as well as the auditory nerve can get compressed within the skull itself. Hydrocephalus often develops in these children, and there can also be a stenosis of the carotid and the vertebral arteries because they also pass through the bony structures in the skull. Often, these children also present with pathological fractures because of their brittle bones, because they are brittle bones because they never mature to form the adult form of bone. The clinical course of this particular disease is pretty rapid, and it is a lethal at a very young age because there is an absence of both bone as well as bone derived hematopoietic cells. So without the presence of a bone marrow transplant, this particular disease is lethal at a very young age. On the right hand side, we will be able to notice that the healthy patient has bone of normal thickness and density, whereas a patient with infantile osteopetrosis here has increased bone density which is uniform throughout. It has a like a ground glass sort of appearance, and there is no medullary canal or no medullary cavity. Hence, there is no space for the hematopoietic stem cells to form all sorts of blood cells, all the RBCs, the WBCs as well as the platelets, which results in pancytopenia. The next form of osteopetrosis is benign osteopetrosis. Benign osteopetrosis is often diagnosed incidentally after a radiological examination of an asymptomatic patient. The age of onset is generally variable. Most of the patients are asymptomatic, that is about 40%. They are diagnosed incidentally in a majority of cases. Then we need to know that the patients generally have a normal lifespan and they are generally healthy, and only clinical manifestations which can be seen in such patients is mild anemia, pathological fractures at an older age which mimic stress fractures, and premature osteoarthritis. Benign osteopetrosis is also known as osteopetrosis tarda. So osteopetrosis tarda is also the most common form of osteopetrosis, and orthopedician will see as an adolescent or an adult because they survive on to adulthood and present with symptoms which are coming within the purview of an orthopedic surgeon, such as pathological fractures as well as premature osteoarthritis. Intermediate osteopetrosis has a phenotype which is in between the malignant osteopetrosis and osteopetrosis tarda. And finally, osteopetrosis which is associated with renal tubular acidosis. In these patients, dental caries, cerebral calcifications and optic atrophy are common, whereas anemia is usually not present in patients with renal tubular acidosis. Most of the findings in these patients are related to the skull. Coming to the genetics, malignant osteopetrosis is transmitted as an autosomal recessive trait. This is seen in the TCIRG1 gene which is on chromosome 11. TCIRG1 is the T cell immune regulator gene which is present on chromosome 11. It is simple, as an autosomal recessive type of inheritance is the only type of inheritance which is possible in a very life-threatening condition. Coming to benign osteopetrosis, which is seen in osteopetrosis tarda, the type of inheritance is autosomal dominant. This is seen through the CLCN7 chloride channel gene which is present on the short arm of chromosome 16. Most patients with osteopetrosis tarda have an autosomal dominant type of inheritance, whereas the intermediate osteopetrosis has a variable type of inheritance. It can be seen both as autosomal recessive as well as autosomal dominant, but the patients who make it to adulthood are mostly autosomal recessive type. Lastly, a small subset of patients who are associated with renal tubular acidosis have an autosomal recessive inheritance and they are linked with cerebral calcifications, as we have seen in the last slide. This is mainly due to the lack of an enzyme known as carbonic anhydrase. Now this carbonic anhydrase is responsible for the production of hydrogen ions. That means they basically acidify the bony surface. So this is not possible. The inorganic material in the bone is not broken down and hence the resorption is blocked. So we will see how carbonic anhydrase works through a osteoclast in this slide. Here we are able to see that there is an osteoblast on the left hand side as well as the osteoclast on the right hand side. We already know that the osteoblast and osteoclast function are linked to each other. So the osteoblasts are stimulated by both parathormone as well as the active form of vitamin D, which is 1,25 dihydroxy vitamin D. Both of them work on the osteoblast and produce the rank ligand. Here we are only showing the osteoblast-osteoclast coupling, so I will not go into the workings of an osteoblast. So this rank ligand, which is produced by the osteoblasts, works on the or activates the rank receptor which is present on the osteoclast. Once the activation is complete, the osteoclast becomes active. That means it starts having ruffled borders. These ruffled borders are important because this is the border through which the osteoblasts disperse their enzymes into the bony surface. Now the osteoclasts, after getting activated, attach themselves to the bony surface through anchoring proteins like integrins. After anchoring themselves onto the bony surface, there is production of carbonic anhydrase as well as TRAP, which is tartarate resistant acid phosphatase. Both of them increase the acidic medium. That means they increase the hydrogen ions in the space between the ruffle borders and the bone. Once there is acidification of the bone, the hydroxyapatite structure of the bone is broken down. So the inorganic matrix of the bone is broken down. The hydrogen ions in the ruffle borders increased, the bony surface is acidified, and the hydroxyapatite structure of the bone is broken down. That means the inorganic part of the bone, that's the calcium and inorganic phosphate, are broken down by the acidic nature which is produced by carbonic anhydrase as well as tartarate resistant acid phosphatase. Once the inorganic material has been taken care of, the organic part of the bone, which is the collagen, that is broken down by the lysosomal enzymes, that is the cathepsin K, and they break down the collagen structure of the bone. And this is how bone is broken down by the osteoclasts. Once the bone is broken down by the osteoclasts, osteoblasts come into that space and lay down more mature bone. This is how a woven bone is converted into a mature bone. This particular flowchart or this particular process is not possible in patients with osteopetrosis, and hence the osteoclasts are not able to resorb the woven bone or the primitive bone and lay down more mature bone.